Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Solo Sessions. I'm your host, Ben Canute, and we're going on here now with a little life update, I guess. We're post race. Last week or so has been about recovering as fast as possible and getting into some good training, building into it, and setting up this build through these next few races I'm doing up to the world champs in November. So you can't really full on taper, you can't really full on rest. You got to continue that upward trajectory, and we did it. I don't know what it is. Every time after a 70.3 Ironman, whatever, whether I'm half jogging the half marathon or, don't have my best race or I'm absolutely smashing it, my quads still get absolutely wrecked. I'm walking funny. I thought I was in the clear after this race in Louisville, and I thought I'd be just fine. But then the few days after, I start walking a little funny. Everything kind of, the quads just tightened up. So had to work through a little bit of that, but we progressed pretty well into the weekend and got in. We're now mostly through this last kind of hard week, and nothing crazy hours wise. It's about the mid 20-ish for the week on top of kind of everything else, but been hitting the workouts really well despite having a bit of a head cold. And that's always a funny thing, right? We're not immune to getting sick. In fact, I think nowadays it seems like we're getting more and more sick all the time because we just keep pushing that envelope of taking ourselves to that edge. And when you train hard, you get to the edge, you risk getting sick, injured, and missing days potentially. And I have this line I also like to ride because I have said it before. I've got a whole file full of Instagram motivational brain rot, whatever you want, that I have on tap where these guys just are saying no, like don't miss a day. It doesn't matter if you're hurt, if you're injured, if you're whatever, you get the work done. And there's part of that attitude that I absolutely love. Love the grit. I love being able to overcome what you think is a limiter and then being able to push beyond it. But there's also reality too. And I think, in my opinion, I'm going off on a tangent now. This wasn't my intention necessarily to start talking about this, but with a lot of those people, you could say David Goggins. There's a guy, Matt Johnson, who just does all the running. I've seen a guy on Instagram, some guy I think is running in the Australia or the UK, like 1,000 kilometers, and dude's got like a blood infection and he's doing it for cancer. So he's still pushing through, and people are literally telling him to stop, and he just won't. But I feel like this push through the pain, don't worry about injury, there's like two aspects to it. One, you're training the mind, you're doing something you don't like, and that has been proven to show. Like I just heard a David Goggins and Andrew Huberman thing on this where some part of your brain actually grows larger, and it's basically like your will to live. So you're kind of training that, but also it's for the average person who is not looking to perform. There is a crazy part of me that likes the idea of pushing as long as you can. You don't have to worry about speed at that point, but just how far can you go? And I think that's what a lot of these people dabble in. It's how many times can I pick up this heavy weight? How many miles can I run if I get X amount, like not even X amount of time, but how many miles can I run? Just period. That's why those backyard ultras are so popular. So people have been going for more rather than, I think, quality sometimes. And that is where things get tricky when you're looking to perform at the highest level, is you got to balance the quality with the quantity. And we're not just out here. It's not as motivating to me. I could go ride my bike probably for 10 hours. That's great. That's fun, especially if you had a trip, but I'm not going to see how long I could go. I'm going to see how, like, if I can be the best. So that brings us back to the sickness. How do you determine if a sickness is going to be limiting or if you should skip a workout? So that's all. I mean, this is also an injury talk too. How can you tell if it's just like this little niggle and some soreness and something that's kind of bothering you, or if this is something that you really need to pay attention to? Some of it, I think, just comes with experience. And there is a line. You've seen some guys talk about it now who have had a couple stress fractures or reactions, or if they've been in the game long enough, you can determine with the amount of sickness you might be whether you should go and work out. If you're throwing up, probably shouldn't. But for me, a head cold, my rule of thumb is if it's from the neck up and you might feel bad that way, you got to give it a shot. You got to keep carrying on, like drink extra water, get extra rest. If you got to take some recovery, but you can carry on with your workouts, and it might be annoying, but it's a mental toughness day and you're going to get the workouts done. And for me, this is all I've had. When you have kids, germ factories, you're going to probably get some sort of sickness at some time. Once it starts to move into your chest, or once you throw up, or if you get into a workout and your body is just absolutely drained and you're not hitting what you're necessarily supposed to, that's when you might consider pulling the plug and taking a rest. And to just expand on that a little farther, you also have to figure out what is the goal of the workout. If it's just to get in time and you just need to move, then you could probably push through certain things. But if you're supposed to hit threshold or a certain quality, that I think starts to, you either have to adjust how the workout is if you're not hitting it and what the goal of the workout is, or you determine that we're going to rest, shut it down, and try again another day. So it's prioritizing the quality, the goals that you have in mind, like what is going to get you to, if your goal is to win the world championships, what's going to get you to winning the world championships. And I think as triathletes, we just have such a hard time not working hard. We love to go out, swim, bike, run, push through. And if we miss a workout, we carry that guilt all day because we feel like one missed workout is going to affect the whole chain. And which is actually hilarious because we also feel like one major workout could change everything, when really it's just you got to be consistent and stack these days. So sometimes it's better to take a step back, rest and recover, and then hit a lot of that consistency. So for me, I always give myself a little bit of time, and had the sickness, I guess, the head cold early on in the week, so you kind of finished up some easy days and getting in, and actually wasn't really sure how things would go and hop into the group swim. And lo and behold, it's a VO Tuesday. And I just figured, you know what? If I got to go second, third, fourth in the lane, follow some people, take a draft, that's fine. Maybe just get in. I always joke. My dad always said, hopping in the pool in the chlorine is the best thing for a sickness, especially if it's just a head cold. Flush your sinuses out with some chlorinated water. And, it's basically like taking a bath in some disinfectant. Just absorb it, and you're going to feel much better after the swim. So I'll go through the workout. It was 2 times through, 6 100s, and it went 100 VO2 on the 120, and then you rolled right into a 50, I believe it was on the minute, just easy. So basically a straight-ish 150. You'd get some rest after the 100 because you're going hard, and this is short course meters. And after that, 6 100s and the 50s easy after those. You do a 300, and then you do the whole set again. The 300 was just easy to reset. First set, just swim. Second set with paddles. So I've been swimming a long time. I can tell if I'm going to feel kind of good or bad, basically almost on the first rep. And, you always give yourself an opportunity to work into it. But the swim where I did not expect anything. You're still kind of getting over, blowing your nose or just feeling like the sinuses are clogged. I feel like the head cold is just, you get it. The in between the workouts feels like you're lazy. You don't want to do anything. But when you get going in the workouts, it's like everything kind of flushes out. You hit a normal and you feel better working out than you did just sitting around the house. So we start this first one. I lead the lane, go off, push it. In my mind, anything under a 65 would have been acceptable for the day. If I couldn't handle on these intervals doing that, I might have made some adjustments, made this a threshold set, sub threshold, or just a cruisy swim. But ripped off the first one in about 61 seconds. So for the full first round, got going 61s, 62s, feeling pretty good. Maybe not the peppiest. We had some people in our lane that was kind of wavy at the time, so I was pretty happy with that because that's a short course meter pool. Plenty of rest, and held it very consistently. Usually if you're very fatigued or not feeling good, the first two or three go super well on a VO2 max set, and then the second half you really start to see that rest or the times go up as you're getting fatigued. So I had that happen a month or two ago doing a set like that where I felt like the first round the first couple I had a really good speed and then just totally tied up and lost it all in the set. So did not happen here. Fired me up, was like, yeah, like I feel like that's the whole point behind those Instagram posts that I was talking about. You push through when you're not feeling good and you don't like it and you get into it, you almost surprise yourself and then you get even more fired up and it kind of builds. And so that second set with paddles, I went for it again a little bit. I got some massive paddles, and my philosophy with paddles is you should be using as big of paddles as possible that will not hurt your shoulders. So I've got like size larges or something like that. They're like dinner plates. Been using them for a decade, basically. Just haven't changed them out. I don't think I'd really be that picky. You can do whatever. I just feel like if I'm going to throw on paddles, I want it to really work on my strength in the swim and really just get that catch. I don't see a point in necessarily wearing super small paddles unless you're purely just trying to correct some form stuff. And those finger paddles are probably the best for that, the ones that just sit on the very edge of your fingers to work on that initial catch. So I usually swim pretty quick with them and a little bit easier because you're not kicking as much with paddles. So I went 60, 61 on that next round of 6x100. So that was pretty happy with that, and continued for the next few days to just kind of hit all the workouts. I did a quadruple brick out of my garage, riding the trainer and running around the neighborhood, and nailed the paces on those and felt like I had quite a bit of good solid energy. So aside from maybe an annoying blowing of the nose before the workouts and feeling like, was just a little bit lazy in between, this was one of those times where you had to kind of test and give it. You can't be afraid of being sick at all. So that all worked out pretty well. But in this VO2 max session, I was also reflecting on some other things where it's just interesting how when you train to do something, you adapt to it and you just get calm in the situation. And I think we do that in a lot of facets of our life overall. But in particular, I think swimming is just such a special one because it's so abnormal. And for a lot of people, when you're swimming and trying to stay afloat, you're fighting for your life. In high school swimming, I think I learned, and just in club swimming in general, it was always an expectation of, at least in my mind, and maybe the coaches didn't really do this or say this necessarily, but there wasn't any hanging on the lane line. There wasn't stopping halfway. If you were doing 100, you did the full 100. If you were doing a 500, you did a 500, unless maybe you're letting somebody go by you. But it wasn't about stopping at all. So especially in high school swimming, we practiced a lot of no breath because the whole theory was the less you breathe, the faster you go. Nowadays, I think they might have changed it because they've definitely had some people pass out underwater when they hyperventilate first and try and swim as far as they can. But if you practice, we had fly rules. You can only breathe every other stroke. In butterfly, you had to take 4 dolphin kicks off the wall. Or if you're really practicing your walls and swimming, you got to hold your breath and then take a few strokes before you breathe so you pick up that momentum. In this, I have probably over the past 25 years of my life in swimming choked on water a lot. And at first, it's very panic-inducing. And I get why, you have that panic and people end up wasting energy in air when they're trying to stay afloat when you swallow a bunch of water. In this wavy pool we were in and doing these VO2 max sessions, and in any swim practice, there's always the possibility, especially when you're swimming open water as well in races, that when you go to take a breath, there is no air there, it's just water. And you take in a large mouthful of it and you have a basically split second reaction to, do I continue to breathe? Do I swallow? Do I spit out the water? What's going on? And sometimes you inhale a little bit, but I just noticed during the set, and I've noticed this before in practices, there's no panic. You just hold your breath and you trust that you're going to come up, you'll get the water out, you maybe cough under the water a little bit, and then take that breath and you continue on and you'll be all right. And I thought in the extreme case, it's like how the big wave surfers train themselves to not panic when they're getting absolutely pummeled by these big waves, which I would probably panic under. You'd have to have a lot of trust because you might be held under for a couple minutes there versus if I'm pushing off a wall and open my mouth to breathe coming off of that wall, I might have to hold my breath for an additional, 10 seconds maybe as I figure myself out and still swim fast. These guys get kicked in the chest essentially and then held underwater, and then they still come up and they trust that they're going to be able to get that breath in. So I just thought that was kind of a cool adaptation that over the years, I guess I've developed, and it's probably helped me out in some situations around the first buoy in races or just when you're swimming in open water and you have that unexpected wave or chop that just hits you. Instead of having to stop to breathe, you can just kind of continue on. And that's, I guess, just what racing is all about, is you have to be able to manage those panic-inducing situations in as calm a mind as possible. And also, just combining that thought with being sick is, I think, some of the reason why people perform well when maybe they have a mild sickness or a mild injury, something that maybe isn't keeping them from being their best, but maybe is making it more difficult, is because you just turn off your brain. You don't really think much about anything else because you have this in the back of your mind, this, whether it's sickness or a niggle. There's actually a saying in golf, like, beware the injured golfer. And that, I think, golf is a very cerebral sport where there's a lot of thinking that happens between the actual action of hitting the ball and then getting to the next spot. Triathlon, I think, is cerebral in the same way, in that we spend a lot of time on the race course doing a very repetitive motion, and there's a lot of time to think in between that. There's a lot of time to think in practice about the interval. What am I doing? Being just almost overthinking what we're doing. And when you have maybe a sickness or when you have something that's bothering you, if you're able to have that little bit of distraction, it almost turns off part of your brain where you're overthinking all of these actions, and it just allows you to focus on, okay, what is the job? Like, what's the basic thing that I have to do to get here? And it's not to say you aren't trying to be your best at it, but it's just eliminating a lot of that extra thought process of how exactly am I holding my hands or doing this. It's the don't think, just do. I'm stealing that again from Top Gun Maverick, because it's just when you go to that flow state, when you want to do something well, if you think about every little movement, it's almost detrimental to you. There's a time and a place for that, but as you're going and trying to execute, turning off that brain and allowing all of that other time that you did practice to just happen, that's when I think sometimes magic happens. And that's what I found myself this week too, is things just surprisingly clicked in all the workouts. Neil wrote some challenging workouts for me to do, and I worked my way through each one, just kind of picking them off. And we've had, I guess, a hectic week with kids' schedules and stuff like that too. So then it's just from one job to the next, like, where the kids got to be, what's my workout, what do we have to do around the house, like all of those things. And instead of trying to think, oh, well, this pace is pretty quick or this pace is, going to be hard to do. You just kind of go out and it's like, okay, well, if I have to hold 320 watts, I'm just going to go hold 320, like whatever. It's just what it is. There wasn't any of that extra energy to think about the what ifs, I guess. So it took away a lot of that. And, I think it forced me to, like, at certain times, like, triathlon is super fun. It's what I love to do. And there's other times where you just got to kind of get the job done as well. Check those boxes and get to that next race, because that's where I'm kind of at. I've really enjoyed the picking apart these different races and working on my race strategy and imagining, doing some visualizing during the sessions for how I might feel and how these races might go. But I guess part of this is I haven't done as much exploration and going out on the bike. I've had to do a lot of stuff on the trainer and treadmill, and it was not bad. Sometimes they have a time and a place. And I know, like, I hate sometimes running on the treadmill, and I sometimes hate riding the trainer. They're just monotonous. The time, I always used to joke, like, if you had 24 hours left to live, spend at least a couple of that on a treadmill or a trainer, because it'll feel like 36 hours that you have to actually live. And it's a tool that I think I've come to appreciate more, especially for its time-saving ability. And when you can use it for things like this quadruple brick, where it's like a short amount of time on the bike, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then you're going right into like a 2K run. So it's hard to build a course and get a quality course for a time trial bike like that. There's usually roads, cars, so the focus work is great to do on there. And same thing with the treadmill. Sometimes a quick, easy run, or, if time is, of the essence and you need to be real efficient, or if it's just like pissing rain outside. Like that happened to me too. The afternoons here, we've been having storms roll in, and, I'm at I sometimes I would go out and brave it and risk it. But I also, if I have a workout or I have intervals, I just want to accomplish that. That's my whole goal of the session. And I've been here for a little bit now, so I kind of have a routine of where I go ride, and it's kind of the same a little bit because there's also that training fatigue. So you just get less creative with the routes. And sometimes your mind just goes, okay, what's the path of least resistance to go out here so that I can execute this workout? And it's gotten even to the point where it's like, okay, I think the trainer today might be the path of least resistance. And also it begs the question, is taking the path of least resistance to execute a workout well always the right way? Because I said at the beginning of this podcast, and like those, like how your brain, that one part of it, that's like your will to live, and, doing hard things that you hate makes it grow. Is picking the path of least resistance for your workout always the best choice? I would say don't get in the habit of it. I think for certain periods, going on the trainer for, time's sake, I've probably done 90% of my rides. If I've done a couple rides outside, and then most of them have been on the trainer, whether it's an easy spin, or I had even a 3-hour ride with just 3 15-minute, basically zone 2 intervals. I've done all of it on there, whether it's because of the rain, time, getting dark out, whatever it is. So that was kind of the path of least resistance for me. It also helps us not really have to have a babysitter as much, because if Courtney needs help or there's something that happens, I'm not stuck 2.5 hours away on the bike. I'm just in the garage. But if you get in the habit, I guess, of always choosing your favorite trail or always picking the enjoyable route, then I guess that could be a slippery slope of maybe you're making things too easy on yourself. Or if you're always picking the easy route rather than the hard route. Because, again, it kind of goes back to you have to enjoy what you do. And I love riding into the mountains, but that's not always the best location for me to do intervals. So if I could do that and it works out, then I'm going into the mountains 9 times out of 10, as long as the weather's good. But if it's not looking great, like you just adjust. So I think it's a balance, because sometimes even the workout itself is just the challenging thing that you have to do. And that's, I guess, the funny part about triathlon as well, is the workouts are fun. Like, I have this weird part of me, like I have a track workout later on tonight, and running sub 5 minute pace for the whole thing. Basically, it's all broken up, but is that fun when it hurts that bad? Like, I get quite a bit of satisfaction out of it, but is the essence of running fast is, but it's going to get hard. And so there's parts of it that aren't going to be fun. So I guess, yeah, if I chose, okay, I don't want to go to the track, I'm just going to do this all basically on a downhill, then I guess that's a little bit different. So yeah, I think and that's where I was just kind of questioning, because I think in general, I would argue that riding outside, running outside, out in real life situations is going to help you much better than just riding the trainer or just on the treadmill. Because especially if you're using erg mode on the trainer, like, there are great tools on a bike trainer and a treadmill to get you hitting very specific paces and power. And those are all good and great. But sometimes to me, it feels like cheating almost. And being able to go outside, pick a pace and not be forced into it, and then hold that, is kind of an art form that you have to learn if you're going to go out and race. So there are some great athletes. Like, I know Matt Hansen spends a lot of time inside, and so does Lionel Sanders. And those guys have great race resumes. And it takes actually probably a lot of mental grit and fortitude and just kind of being a badass to just stare at a blank wall or just listen to music. And maybe just, even if you're just watching videos, like, it's tough to only train inside or train a majority inside. But I do think that there's a little piece of the puzzle you miss if most of your stuff happens inside for basically year round, because there's just that, I guess, the art of racing and being outside and feeling that. So that's mainly an opinion. But I do think, like, that treadmill trainer, just kind of last thought on it, is a little bit harder. So I would say you could probably value, if you're on the trainer for 3 hours, you could probably in your mind tell yourself, oh yeah, like that was probably a little bit longer, because there's no breaks on the downhills or anything like that. And I always felt like if I could run the pace on the treadmill or ride the power that I wanted to race at and do a workout there, I could definitely do it outside. Because for me, I think I run a bit faster, not on the treadmill, just with my run mechanics. And then I also I find power easier to hold when you're going outside, can feel the speed, you're motivated by the surroundings, and it's not just this constant kind of grind on the trainer. So I guess today we're going to finish up with just the last workout that I did, I guess, because there's two interesting or funny situations that came from this week. So I referenced it a little bit earlier in the podcast. Just, I did a quadruple brick, and this workout had it all. Basically, there was a few different reasons for it. One is because I just need to get this run to click off the bike. This is something that Oceanside was kind of about there, but since then, just haven't really had a run where I feel like I'm expressing what I'm doing in training. Whether I'm running off the bike in training or just straight up running. Like, I know I've got pretty good run fitness, but it just has not showed. So part of that is maybe doing some more bricks and getting a little bit more used to running hard off the bike, getting that feeling of it. So we did this, but we also designed it because Hoka now has 2 super shoes, both super fast shoes. But for me, I always find it hard to make this decision of which one do I go for. And whenever I choose equipment, and I thought this might be interesting because how do pros choose equipment? And this is just kind of my process that I go through, because one, you have to lean on some sort of scientific data. You got to find a way to test it that is worthwhile and that you can fall back on, that, hey, this is like proof. Then there's also that just confirmation of what you're feeling. Like I feel like I can put on these shoes, wear them a little bit in different situations and start to be like, okay, this one feels faster. Let's get some data to confirm it. And then now even like emotionally, like I feel like this is right. So we designed this brick for like to go 4 times through to test these two shoes and see if we can figure out which one feels better and which one is seeming to test better. And to do that, we use the Stride pods. I've been using Stride for a long time. If you've been following me, they're great. Not sponsored by them. I was at one point, but they've really advanced. And so they give you a lot of data to work with. And it's been kind of fun to go through, look at different intervals and see, you know, leg spring stiffness, ground contact time, leg speed, all that sort of thing. So as I'm going through this, this is just, you know, I think what my theory was going in is on the one hand, there's the CLO X1 version 2, and then there's the Rocket X3. Those are the two newest versions. I really liked this version of the CLO. Like I thought that they were lighter, they were responsive, and to me, wearing them felt like when there's no such thing as super shoes and you just put on a pair of spikes or flats or just normal running shoes, you just had that bounciness off the pavement. That's what putting on those shoes felt like to me. So I was like, oh, I really want these to be fast. Like it'd be so cool to have these new shoes be fast. And when we first tested them, they did test faster than the Rocket X2 or 3s at the time. The X2s and X3s are very similar. So they tested faster for me, but that was in straight run workouts. And so I was also like, okay, it's cool. They feel better. It felt like for me with my run mechanics, the CLOs were different than how I had been running in the Rocket X3s. And I think that's just with how that particular rocker plate is. And I think the super shoe foam is similar, but the CLOs feels a bit more plush than the Rocket X3s, which feels a bit more, I guess, stiff, although it's still a super shoe foam. So there's still like some bounciness to it, of course. So I'm going to kind of go into, I guess I'm not a shoe expert necessarily, but just from how I choose this, and this is just kind of my opinion between these two. And I guess for reference, if you're trying to decide between the two, I would go try out both because they're both amazing shoes and I love them. Like I love running in both of them, but I've just found like some nuances in it. So my run form, I think, is slightly different with the CLOs. And in these few races, I just feel like because of that plush, like if my run stride length was expanding, it might make up for some of this cadence I feel I'm losing with the CLOs at the moment. The Rocket X3s being a bit stiffer, I feel like I have to be a little bit moving my feet a little bit more. So maybe there's some mental complacency going on in my mind with the CLOs versus the X3s, or maybe there's some run mechanic stuff going on. But we go through this, and for me, it looks like now off the bike because maybe of fatigue, and we didn't even bike that much on these bricks. It was only about 5 minutes long at race pace, which obviously stacks up the more intervals that you do. But it seemed like the Rocket X3s were better for me coming off the bike instead of the CLOs, which I think if I am fresh and I'm not running with a bunch of fatigue, I think that those CLOs would be a really good shoe. Especially, I think the CLOs could be really good for the marathon, in particular with how good they feel on your legs. So I think you could probably, if you can keep some good form, or at least for me, if I could keep some good form, like I think those could be really good marathon shoes just because of how plush and responsive they are. I think they could save your legs for late in the marathon. But for running faster speeds, just I think the X3s, they potentially could be a bit lighter, but just with that little bit of extra stiffness, responsiveness, and importance of the leg speed, those I think are going to be my 70.3 and below. We got to do some more testing, but this is kind of I feel like it confirmed my gut feeling, just like before when I first tested the Cielos. I felt like those would be faster, and those testings just with straight running confirmed my gut feeling. So I don't know, maybe I'm just going in circles. This definitely isn't the issue with me running off the bike. That is multifaceted, probably some nutrition for how I'm going in there, probably with how hard I've been pushing some of the bikes that plays a role. And then also just heat and maybe adjusting things for those particular conditions. I think we'll learn a lot coming into Santa Cruz, and we'll be able to figure out, okay, how did the shoes work? How did they feel? Then how was the nutrition? It's going to be a lot milder. And I assume that we're probably going to be pushing harder on the bike than I have, because there's some front runners up there who should come out of the swim near me, and I'll have some company. So we'll all be pushing each other. So all of those factors will be able to then compare to Louisville and see, where am I at? What improvements did I make? And just in that last thing on those bricks, and to just, I'm just going to give myself a little pat on the back for balancing dad life and being a triathlete. I only had a few minutes in between these bricks, and, life happens. Things are hectic. Courtney was inside with the kids watching them, but she got hung up and was busy with Briella and just doing some stuff inside, and just Caden had this huge, massive poopy diaper. And so for a little bit of help, a little bit of reprieve in between, I'm on diaper duty. Doesn't happen often in the middle of a workout, but every so often you get thrown a little wrench in the plan of what you were doing, and you got to respond. Just like when you're choking on water in the middle of a swim set, are you going to stop and lose those 10, 20, 30 seconds? Or are you going to man up, get through the interval, and then get going? And I'm happy to report that my diaper changing skills, if there is a triathlon that incorporates the changing of a diaper, in particular, just a massive poopy diaper, I think I can definitely win that competition. I had that diaper changed, and Caden was off running to go join his sister super fast, made it within the rest interval, and was back on the bike ready to go for another round just like that. So I would say that's one of the reasons. That was one of the pros of, being able to do a workout in the garage and not being out at some random trailhead, is because every so often there is something that's going on at home that, you gotta be able to adjust for. And frankly, I think it was a good lesson in adapting to things that potentially could be frustrating. I think ideally we all want our workouts to go super smooth and not have anything interrupt them. Whether that's if you're out on the road and a car goes by blaring its horn at you, if somebody steps out in front of you on the bike path, if there's a mechanical, like a flat that happens. I think it's healthy to be able to respond to those situations, even if you are frustrated, but be able to control that and use it in the right way. And that just reminds me of Bob Bauman, Michael Phelps's coach, always messing with him when he was younger and around, stealing his goggles or making them leak, making sure that the hotel wouldn't serve his favorite breakfast before the race, doing all these little things to see if he could get to him and how he would respond, because inevitably something in the race will go wrong. You will have to respond, adapt, overcome it, because there's no such thing as the perfect race, even though we're all trying to achieve it. And I think that was just a kind of hilarious version of that. And I would way rather have that, because I've had, Courtney come out into the garage as I'm doing a strength workout with Caden bleeding from the head because he knocked his head so hard on something, just because he's a boy, and man, he just always has bumps and bruises on himself from rolling out the front door or climbing up on something, trying to jump off. Meanwhile, not that Briella doesn't get any injuries or anything like that, but she might just be coloring at the table just quietly and just like looking at her brother like, what are you doing? So that's life. It's balancing it, and overall got everything done that I needed to do. I feel pretty confident about what's going on with Santa Cruz. I'm looking forward to that race. This is a fun part of the season where you basically race, recover for a few days, build back into some big training, hit some big quality training, and then back off a little bit and race again. So I've got that cycle for Santa Cruz and Augusta, and then it'll be a pretty big solid push for about a month, I would say, to get to Marbella. So we find ourselves right in the middle of it. and just kind of handling anything that's thrown at us. So that's being ruggedly flexible and resilient. So just happy with being able to execute the races, or I should say workouts, working on executing all the races. But happy with that. Feel like we've got a little bit of life balance going on, which is always good, even though, it's riding a roller coaster sometimes. And then, yeah, I think that's about it. This episode, not maybe super long. I know the race recap was up there. I'd be interested to hear if anybody has an ideal time they would like. I obviously can at least put in a solid 30 minutes of talking to myself and could push it to 60 plus minutes, but I feel like if I can at least get you through a good chunk of your workout for the weekend, that's great. So appreciate everybody who has been tuning in, sending me any messages, leaving comments, or giving me reviews, that sort of thing. It's cool to see that people are enjoying this. Trying to be as open as I can and let you behind the scenes a little bit for what's going on. I'll keep sharing some workouts, and we'll just keep on keeping on. So that kind of ends this episode of Solo Sessions. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And next episode, we'll be going into the race. So I don't know if we're going to do another little race week predictions. It might just be a full-on race episode, because I know this weekend we got a heck of a lot of good racing going on between Ironman stuff. We got T100 stuff going on. So I haven't really dabbled in talking about any other races, but I want to keep my eyes open and see if there's anything spectacular that happens that really catches my eye. So thanks again, everybody. Appreciate the listens, and talk again soon.